Today she's going to learn about different ways of killing people. Okay. We're on Daf Mem Tesla Mebeis, the new Perek Arba Mises Bezdin. Arba Mises Nimsur LeBezdin. There were 4 Mises that were given over to Bezdin. Skila Sreifa Hereg V'chenek. This is the classic, what we think about. We think Skila, which is stoning, Sreifa, burning, Hereg, which is decapitation, and Chenek, which is choking. And Rashi explains this is the order from most Chomer to least Chomer, because, and what's an nafkamina? The nafkamina is if someone does 2 of those things, he gets the more Chamedika ones. You have to know which is Muhammad to know which one to apply. Whichever is Muhammad, that's what they get. That's the Rabbanan Shita. Reb Shimon Omer Sreifa Skila, he holds Sreifa is more Chamed than Skila, and Chanek v'Hereg, he holds Chanek is more Chamed than Hereg. Zu mitzvahs haniskalim. These are the mitzvahs, these are the rules for those who get Skila, meaning we had started before talking about Skila, so now we're continuing with saying what are the other, according to Chacham, Skila is the most Chamer, then we go on to the other types of mises. Amar Rav, Amar Rav, Amar Schayr, Amar Rav Huna. Kol makom sheshanu Chacham derech minyan. Whenever the Mishnah gives you a list of things, ein mukdam o mo'achar. There's no precedence in them. When the Mishnah gives you a list, it's not meaning to say that one comes before the other. Now, obviously, our Mishnah is not like that. As we're going to see, the Gemara is going to talk about that. He's saying as a general rule, when you have a list in the Mishnayos, it's not, there's no precedence. Chutz mishiva samonim, except for the 7 types of samonim, the 7 types of agents, which is talking about, if there's a stain on a cloth, there's a test you can do to tell whether that stain is blood. And you put on these 7 agents, these 7 types of materials that we're going to see in the Mishnah, and then if the blood comes off from them, if the stain comes off from them, then that shows that it was blood or not. How it reacts to those things. Okay, so if it comes off after you put these things on, that means it's blood. If not, then it's not. What are these Shiva Samonim? The Tanan Shiva Samonim Mavirin al HaKesem. There are 7 agents that you put onto a stain. Roik Tafel, Roik like dry saliva when someone hasn't eaten anything. Umei Grisin, a certain liquid that comes from beans. Umei Raglayim, and urine. The netter, which Rashi says is a kind of earth. I think it sounds to me a little bit like fertilizer, like nitric acid, something that contains nitrogen, which is fertilizer. Uboris, which Rashi says is a kind of grass. I thought it was like boric acid, but I have no basis for that. And Kamulia, which Rashi said he doesn't know what that is, so we're not any better than Rashi. Uktani Seifa. What'd you say?
Yeah.
Now, didn't they take that out? Yeah, the last one is Ashlog. I don't remember. Did Rashi say an explanation of that? Yeah, Rashi said it was like Rashi did say that one.
I think it's found in
Benikve Margolius. It's found in the cracks in a jewel that come from the sea, which should normally be pearls. Pearls don't really have cracks. I guess some kind of Margolius that comes from the sea. Anyway, you apply all these 7 things. Uktani Seifa, Havirin Shaloi Kasidra, Havirin Shivasan Ka'echad Lo'asav Klum. If you did them not in the proper order, or you put all 7 of them on at the same time, it's not going to work. You have to do them in this precise order and then see if the blood comes off. So that is the exception. Rav Schreier says generally we don't care about the order, but in this case of the Samonim we do care. Rav Papa Saba Mishmei Rav Amar Af Arba Mises says our Mishnah is also an example where we care about the order. The Kamaflik Rav Shimon. Shmami no dafka ktani. From the fact that Rav Shimon is being chaylik on it, obviously we care about the order. There's only difference between the Tanakama and Rav Shimon is the order. The Idach, So why did Rav Schreier say only Shiva Samanim? What about our Mishnah? The Plukta Kamari. He wasn't saying the cases that are machlekes obvious. I think what that means is that since it's obvious from the context where there's a machlekes about the order, that obviously the order is important. It's not even necessary to say that the order is important. Rav Papa Amar, Af Sedi Yuma. In addition to Rav Schreier's din of 7 of the Samanim, the Seder of the Hayom of Yom Kippur is also in order. The Tanan Kol Ma'aseh Yom Kippur Ma'murim ala Seder. All the whole Seder Yom Kippur, which is the whole Masechtas Yuma has the Seder of Yom Kippur, the Avodah. You're not Yotze, you have to do everything in order. V'idach Hahu Chumra B'Alma. The other man, the Amar, meaning Rav Schreier, who didn't mention it, means Chumra Ba'alma, which does not mean what we think it is. It doesn't mean that it's a Stama Chumra and you don't have to do it. It means pretty much the other way around. Where's the Rashi? Idach Amalach, the second wide line. Vade Dafka Ktani. Miu Chumra Ba'almu. Shehichmer HaKosa Ba'avodas Oisei HaYom. The pasuk is machmer about Yom Kippur. Shem Shina B'Sidrei Pasav. V'loy Mishum Chashivas D'Avodas Hu. Shtei Zois Chamura V'Chashuva Mechaverta. It's not a seder. The other sederim that we're talking about, let's say Lagabi the Samanim, one is stronger than the other, or Lagabi the Mises, one is more chomer than the other. Lagabi the seder of Yom Kippur has nothing to do with the relative chumrah of one thing to the other. So that was a Rashi. It's a chaymer of Yom Kippur itself that has to be done in order, but it doesn't have anything to do with the relative chumrah of one thing with the other or how they react to one another. That's the reason why it wasn't said. Okay, that's what we wanted to see from Rashi. I like to look at the Rashis when the Rashis explain it exactly the opposite of the way it seems like we would read it, but they're certainly right. Because it is ma'akev. There's no one who's chaylik on that. Sagt Gemara weiter. Also the seder of how you bring the carbon tamid. The tani Allah. Zeu seder tamid. This is the way you bring the carbon with you bring the carbon and you do the shchita and the zrika. V'idach hahula mitzvah ba'alma. He says no. Even if you don't do it in order, you still yotze the din of tamid. It's not likuva. That's why he doesn't mention it. He disagrees. He says it's not likuva. So we all said there's still all going on Rav Scheier's original contention that generally nothing is, whenever you have a list in the Mishnah, it's not, the Seder is not ma'akev. It doesn't have to be in that Seder, except for, we said Samanim, and we said all these other, our Mishnah, there's all exceptions for different reasons he didn't list them. But what is he coming to exclude? What is he saying that when the Mishnah says that the Seder is not important? So, as opposed to an example of where there's a list that's not, the Seder is not important, is the mitzvah of Chalitza. It's not. Mitzvah's Chalitza. How do you do the mitzvah of Chalitza? Bahu v'yavimta lifnei bezdin. The Yavam and the Yavama come to Bezdin, the man and the woman. And the Bezdin would give him advice about whether he should be miyabim her or whether she should be Chalitza. You know, if she's 50 years younger than him, it's not so appropriate for him to marry her. The dibrei elav. It's in the pasuk that they should be miyayitzim. Then what they kick it off by saying v'hi meres. She says the nusach of the pasuk mo en yavmi, right? V'im lo yachvut zeichel kach zivim. They've also even to ashar leskein v'amra mein yavmi l'hakim l'akav shem Yisrael v'le'ava yavmi. She says that nusach. But who and he responds to her, Lo chafatzi lakachta, I don't want to take her. He has to say the words of the pasuk. He would say it in Lashon HaKodesh exactly the way the Torah says it. And then this is the Gemara saying that this is the next thing that they did. They would come close to this gain. She would take off his shoe, his slipper, and she would spit in front of him, and the Dayanim have to see the saliva. And at that point, she would say, this is what is done. This is what you do to someone who doesn't want to build his brother's house. And that's the final kriya that she has to say. The Amar of Yehuda summarizes what we just said. Mitzvah chalitza kaira. First she says the first pasuk, the kaira. Then he says the next pasuk. Chaletzes for kekas. Then you do the actions of chalitza and rekika, of taking off the shoe and spitting. The kaira, and then she says the final lashon of Ansav Amar Kacha Yisei Leish. Why does what is Rabbi Yehuda Amarav? What is Amar Rabbi Yehuda? What is he saying? He's just summarizing what we said before. What does he have to say it over again? Sagt the Gemara, mitzvah hachi bi'apech leslamba. He's coming to tell you that it doesn't make a difference if you change the order. He's coming to tell you that like Rav Schairer said, it's only by the case of Amonim in our Mishnah and the specific cases that we care about the order, but generally, like the case of Chalitza, the Torah tells you all the different components. If you don't say it in the right order, it's still good. L'chatchila, you should say it in the proper order, but if not, it's not mak. Or less lamba. Tanya nami hachi bein shehikdam chalitza l'rekika or rekika l'chalitza masha asa asi. Whichever direct order you do it, it works. Alafuka mehad tanan, and this is not like what we learned. Kohen gadol mishamish b'shmoyne kelim. The Kohen Gadol has to use 8 kelim. He has 8 begadim that he wears. The Hejit ba'arba, and the Hejit has 4. B'ksainis, b'mechnasayim, b'mitznefes, v'avnei. That he wears a ksainis, which is like a long undershirt, and mechnasayim, which is pants, mitznefes, and a hat, v'avnei, and a belt. Motzei and Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol has in addition to that choshen v'ephod, the choshen and the ephod. Umeil, and this is like an overcoat, utzitz, and the tzitz that goes around his head. The Tanya, minanshali heidavar koydam l'mechnasayim. How do we know that you don't wear anything before the mechnasayim? Shenema mechnasibad, you are sorry. The Torah says that the mechnasibad has to be directly on the skin, so you can't first put on the me'il, and then afterwards, I'm sorry, not the me'il, the ksainis, and then afterwards put on the mechnasayim, because then the mechnasayim wouldn't be directly on the basa. The Tana, my time aktamel ksainis. Why do we put the ksainis first if you talk of putting on the mechnasayim? Mishum the aktamei kra, because in the pasuk it said the ksainis before the mechnasayim. Or kra my time aktamei mishum the machse kula gufa adifale, because we want to say that which is most the thing that he's basically dressed in. This is the full dressing. We don't mention the mechnasayim. We dress the we talk about the main thing. So when Rav Schairer said that we don't care about the order, that's this Mishnah as well. This is in addition to Chalitza, we also have this second Mishnah where even though it's said in order, the order was not lav dafka. You really have to do the mechnasayim first. Okay, so this Gemara is going to go on our Mishnah. The Mishnah said a machlekes. The Tana Kama says the order of Chumrah in the Mishnah is skila, sreifa, hereg, chanek. Rav Shimon disagreed. He reversed each pair. He reversed, instead of skila, sreifa, he says sreifa, skila. And instead of hereg, chanek, he says chanek, hereg. The Mishnah is going to go through first, there's going to be over more than almost a blot. We're going to go through one by one. First, according to the Rabbanon, why is skila Muhammad than the other 3, then Sreifa, Hereg, Chanek? Then why is Sreifa Muhammad than Hereg and Chanek? And why is Hereg Muhammad than Chanek? Then we're going to go through Shimon and go through his list. So according to him, why is Sreifa more Chamor than skila, Chanek, and Hereg? Then why is Sreifa? Then why is skila Muhammad and Chanek and Hereg? And then why is Chanek itself Muhammad and Hereg? And that's going to be the order of the next blot. So Zok the Gemara. Skila, the Mishnah said skila Sreifa Hereg Chanek Kwentacham. Skila Chamur Misreifa. The reason why skila is more Muhammad than Sreifa, Shechei Nitna L'Magadif V'Loiver of the Galilim. Skila is imposed on someone who is a who's Megadif, who's blasphemes, and he's Ived Avodah Zarah. My Chumrah, Shechein Poishit Yadei Beker. It seems pretty obvious, right? He's someone who's being Ived Avodah Zarah is doing the worst thing. He's being rebelling against the Rebbeinu Shalom. Other Rabbi affecting more Sreifa Chamura. Let's say Sreifa is Mochama. Shechein Nitna Lebas Kayin Shezinsa. Because it's given to a Bas Kayin that was Mezana. Oh, my Chumrah, why is that so terrible? When the Mishnah, when the Gemara is asking my Chumrah, it's saying you have to give me a little more color. What is the Chumrah of that? Why is that Muhammad? So she's causing her father to be embarrassed. He's not just embarrassed, he's not going to be treated as a Kayin. People are going to look down at him that he's a Kayin whose daughter was Mezana. It's going to take away his status. That's a terrible thing. So it's very hard. This is the Rishonim ask about like what is the svar of this? It sounds bizarre that specifically a Bas Kayin who's Mezana, that's Daima to Oived Avodah Zarah. Yeah. Now, just to give some prefatory explanation, we're going to be talking a lot about a Bas Kayin and Naira Marasa and a Nesua. So the Torah says a couple of things. First of all, a woman who is Mezana, the general rule is she gets Chenek. That's the baseline. She gets Chenek. Now, the Torah also says that a Naira Hamerasa, someone who's not Nesua, but Mureses, that's worse. Because in addition to the fact that she's being Mezana on her husband, she's also betraying her father. She's still in the Rishus of her father. She has an additional Chumrah. So therefore she gets Skila. The Torah says she gets Skila. In addition, the Torah says that a Bas Kayin gets Sreifa. So it's a third type of possible chiyuv. And as we're going to see, it's a machlokes of whether between Rav Shimon and Chachamim, which will affect our machlokes of whether Skila and Sreifa is Muchamer. It's not clear. The Torah is not clear whether that which we say that a Bas Kayin gets Sreifa, is that applying to a Nesua, or is it applying just to a Mureses, a Bas Kayin who's a Naira Mureses, or is it even applying to Nesua? So that's what the Gemara is going to go through. So in any case, we said this is our question. Why did the Chachamim say Skila is Chamura? Because it gets because he's Ived Avodah Zarah, which is obviously Chamur. Maybe Sreifa is Chamur because it applies to a Bas Kayin. So and for the Gemara, Kasavi Rabbanan Nesua Yoitzel Sreifa V'loy Arusa. That din that we said that a Bas Kayin gets Sreifa is only on Nesua, but not an Arusa. That means an Arusa still gets she gets the same as any Arusa, which is the Chomadika din of Skila. So if you don't say that, if you said that both a Nesua and a Nesua get Skila, gets Sreifa, so then we would be saying, we know that a Bas Kayin is Mochamer. If you were to say that a Arusa Bas Yisrael gets instead of getting Skila, which is a regular Arusa gets, Arusa Bas Kayin gets Skila instead of the Sreifa that she would have, let me get it. If you would say she gets Sreifa instead of the Skila that she gets as a regular Bas Yisrael, that would show you that Sreifa is Muchamer. But since the Chachamim hold that it's only a Nesua who, if she wasn't a Bas Kayin, would get Chenek, so that's certainly Sreifa, everyone agrees is Muhammad and Chenek, then we could understand that a Skila is Muhammad and an Arusa is upgraded to Skila, and therefore there's no need to upgrade her to Sreifa because she's getting something Chamadik just outside Arusa. Savi Rabban Nesua Yaitzel Sreifa v'loy Arusa. Umid Afka Rachman Arusa v'Skila Shma Mina Skila Charusa. chamura. So Rashi actually takes away these words. He takes that as a long Rashi. He goes through the svara of how this is. He says it's not really a limud from here. It's not a proof from here. This is more that misvara, I would say, that skila is more chamor because it's attached to avodah zarah, which seems to be the most chamadik thing. But we would have had a kasha, and we're answering that kasha. So that's essentially what the Gemara is saying, is that according to the Rabbanan, that says that a nesua bas kayin gets reifa, but not an arusa, we can understand that skila is more chamer than sreifa. Now we continue. Skila chamura misayif. So we're going to continue down the list, right? We're going through first all the din of how we know skila is more chamer than everything. So the next thing on the list, we did skila and sreifa. The next thing is sayif, which is the same thing as hereg, which is decapitation. Skila chamura misayif shechein nitna l'megadef lo eved oved is kechavim. My chumra kedamar, like we said before, the chumra is that he's kaifa be'ikr. Adarab b'sayv chumra shechein nitna l'anshi ir anidachas. It's imposed on the people of Ir anidachas, so the city that gets destroyed. The whole city was oved avodah zarah. My chumra shechein memoinen oved. Their money, not only are they killed, but their money is also piled up in the town square and destroyed. So maybe that's the chamura. So how do we know? So maybe taka sayif is more chamer because it includes extra punishments. So Aknamar Amrit eze kayach maruba kayach hamidiach or kayach hanidach. Which is more chamedic? Is it the person who gets other people to be over, or the person who is convinced to be over? Havi omer kayach hamidiach. Obviously, the one who persuades other. Like when we saw this before, we had this earlier in Sanhedrin, right? That the Ma'indiach, he gets no breaks in Bezdin. You can come even if you found them to be innocent. You can go find them to be. You can say lechayva afterwards. So the mediach is mochamer Tanya medichir nidachas beskila. That someone who's mediach near nidach, instead of getting sayif, he gets skila, according to the Rabbanan. So lechayra, it must be that skila is mochamer than sayif if you're getting upgraded for being a mediach as opposed to a nidach. So skila is mochamer than saif or hereg. Skila chamura mechanek, and next is how do you know skila is mochamer than the least chamadik thing, which is chanek? Like we said before, the chumra already of skila. It's given to someone who hits his parents. Because the covet of a parent is compared to the covet amakim. So, I mean, this is obviously needs a little bit of understanding. I guess it means what it means is that they say different things. They say Taisa says that it means just that at the end of the Taisa he says that they're similar. Obviously, if the parent is compared to the Rebbeinu Shalom and avodah zarah is against the Rebbeinu Shalom, how could this be more chamer? So he says it just means it's equal. But I would have said that this two, we saw in addition to being Ki'ilu, he's being Oived Avodah Zarah, he's being Kaifa Be'ikr because his parents are Hukish Shabashim. He's also disrespecting his parents. So there's two parties that are being hurt. So Zok the Gemara, min after Rachman al Arusa Bas Yisrael Mechlal Nesua Bas Yisrael Mechanik L'Skila. Like we said before, we said that an Arusa gets Skila. Arusa, a Nara Amurasa is more Chamer. Like we said, because you're disrespecting the father. You're being bigoted, she's being bigoted on the father. So therefore she gets skila. But a regular, if she's a nesua, where the father is not involved, she gets chanek. So you see that skila is more chamer than chanek. Because that's the upgrade. Shami now skila chamura. So now we went through skila, according to the Rabbana. Now we go to the next thing. Next thing down after skila is sreifa. So sreifa is less chamer than skila, but it's more chamer than hereg and chanek. So we go through them one by one. Sreifa chamura misayif, which is hereg shechenit lebas kayin shezinsa, because it's given to a bas kayin. So like we said, a bas kayin shezinsa, according to the Rabbanan, a nesua gets Sreifa. My Chumrah.
Narusa.
No. He says an Arusa gets skila. She gets, just like a Bas Yisrael gets skila, Arusa gets skila. A Bas Kain also gets skila because the Rabban holds skila is more chamer. They don't get downgraded.
It's the Nesua who gets of a Bas Kain who gets
She'll get a Nesua of a Bas Kain, instead of getting chenek, will get skila. Just like a non-Bas Kain.
So who gets Sreifa of the Bas Kain and a Nesua? A Nesua Bas Kain gets.
Nesua Bas Kain gets. I'm sorry. Nesua Bas Kain gets Sreifa.
And an Arusa.
He gets upgraded from Chanek to Sreifa.
And an Arusa.
Arusa gets.
Not really. So I thought we said according to Rav Shimon, right?
I'm sorry. A Nesua is Yaitzel Sreifa, which is less chum. A Nesua Bas Kain gets Sreifa, and an Arusa Bas Kain gets
according to the Chachamim,
he gets the same. She gets the same as a Bas Yisrael who gets skil, and that's the most chamadik thing, and it comes because of the Arusa part.
Right. All right.
The Bas Kain gets a Nesua instead of getting Chanek.
Gets Sreifa.
So that tells you obviously that Sreifa, even though it's less chamer than skila, is more chamer than Chanek. Umay chumra shechem echal savia. Adarab asayif chamer shechenit la'an she'ir hanidachas. Umay chumra shechem b'mayne noven. So the Gemara, Nemar avia b'skila, v'nemar avia b'sreifa. May avia amar b'skila, skila chamura misayif. Av avia amar b'sreifa, sreifa chamura misayif. The Gemara says we're not up to Chanek yet. We're talking about Hereg. So what do you know Hereg? So we're saying maybe Hereg, since it's by Ir Nidachas, it's Mammon of it. So because since there's a Gzeira Shava between Sreifa and Skila, and we know Skila is more Chamor. We already learned before that Skila is more Chamor than Hereg. So certainly, we'll be from Gzeira Shava, we'll say that Sreifa is also more Chamor than Hereg. Now we continue. Sreifa Chamor Chanek Shchenit L'Bas Kain Shazinsa. Umay Chumra Kedamar Adaraba Chanek Chamor Shchenit L'Maki Ava V'Imay. So how do we know that Chanek is less chamor than Sreifa? From the fact that was considered an upgrade, right? Before by Sayif we had to learn it out because we didn't have the example. But over here we have the exact example that the Torah said that someone, according to the Rabbanan, someone who is a regular Nesua gets Chanek, and then if she's a Bas Kayin, she's upgraded to Sreifa. So Vais Dais, Sreifa is Mocham. Shramina Sreifa Chamura. Now finally up to the last thing. Sayif Chama Michanek. Now we how do we know Sayif itself is Chama Michanek? Shchenit L'Anshe Ir Nidachas, and my Chuma Shchem Mainam Avad. Arab Chanek Chama, Shchin the Makav V'Ima, my Chuma Shchem Hukush. So the Mara, I feel hockey poishid yode beikar adif. At the end of all this, we came up with all these complicated cheshbainis, and now we come to the last one. We say hereg must be, or sayif has to be more chamer than chanek, because it's talking about ir nidachas. Ir nidachas is avodah zara. You can't compare that to maka ava v'imai, which is a lower level, which is not being directly rebelling against their Rebbeinu Shalom. So now we're going to do Reb Shimon. We're going to go through the same exercise with Reb Shimon, with his reality that he says. First of all, because it's going to come, like we said, based on his machlokes, both legabe what the din is by a Nesua Bas Yisrael and a Naira Marasa Bas Yisrael. And Nesua and Naira Marasa Bas Kayin, that he's chaylik on Rabbanan. And I think it's also going to be coming out with I think he has a second machlokes about a Mediach. No, I think it's only machlokes. So let's go through. Reb Shimon said that Sreifa and Skila is the most chamor, followed by, instead of Hereg and Chanek, it's Chanek v'Hereg. So Sreifa Chamura Miskila. Why is Sreifa Chamura Miskila? Shchein nitnul lebas koyin shedinsa. Umay chumash shemchalas aviyah. That's the reason why it's more chamer. Adarab Miskila Chamura shchein nitnul megadav leivad aves kechav umay chuma shechosh yad beikar. So the Gemara answers, Shimon l'tamei the Amar achas arusa va'achas netzua yasal l'sreif. He disagrees with the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say only in Nesua is Yaitzel Sreifa. But in Arusa, she already gets skila just like a Bas Yisrael, and that's Mochamer. But Reb Shimon disagrees. He says a Arusa Bas Kayin also is switched. Instead of what she would normally get skila, she gets Sreifa. Now it wouldn't make sense to upgrade her unless it's to something Mohammedic. Must be that Sreifa is more chamer. Sreifa chamura mechanek. So we're continuing on in the list. According to Reb Shimon, the third thing on the list of the chumras instead of hereg is chanek. So how do we know Sreifa is more chamer than the next thing on the list? My chomer kedamar. Other abachanek chamer shechinid lamak av beimay my chomer. So how do we know? So this is just what the arguments on both sides. We said on everything, we always just state what the theoretical arguments would be why it should be more chamer. So the moment the afkar rachmana l'sua bas kayin mechlal nesua bas yisrael mechanik l'sreifa. Since we say a nesua bas kayin gets sreifa, right? According to Rav Shimon, both a nesua and a arusa bas kayin gets sreifa, and a bas Yisrael who's nesua, that means a regular stam isha who's mezana gets chanek. So for the fact that being upgraded from chanek to sreifa, shmamina sreifa chamura must be that sreifa is more chamur than from chanek. Now sreifa chamura misayif. What about sayif? How do we know that sreifa is more chamur than sayif? Shechenit labas kayin shezinsa. My chumra kedamar. Other abasayif chum shechenit la'anshe yar nidachat. My chumra shechem moinam avad. Again, the same arguments. Amet v'chi eze kayach meruba, kayach hamediach or kayach hamediach. Which is more chamer, the kayach of the person who gets someone else to be over or someone who is? Haviyam kayach hamediach, v'kal v'chaymer. U'ma chanek shechamer misayif. So, and according to Reb Shimon, there's going to be a machlekes. So Shimon is chaylik on the chachamim. The Rabbanan said before that the mediach gets, what was it? I think he said it gets skila.
Right.
And Rav Shimon says they get chanek. So, therefore, so we're saying, obviously, chanek is mochamer than saif, because the anshe yerni dachas themselves get saif. The mediach gets chanek, so the chanek is mochamer, and sreifa is more chamer than chanek. So it's certainly, because like we said, by a bas kayin gets upgraded from chanek, nesua gets upgraded to sreifa. So certainly it's also going to be more chamer than saif, which is less chamer than chanek, according to Reb Shimon. Skila, now we have to start with skila. According to Reb Shimon, we went through sreifa. Now we move on to the next Muhammadic thing, which is skila. Skila chamura mechanek shechenit lemagada v'lo even avodas kechavim. Skila is more chamer from chanek because it's given to for avodah zara. My chomer k'damar adarab chanek chamer shechenit lemak aviima. My chomer shechen hukish aviyim l'shamayim, like we said before. So maybe, how do we know that skila is more chamer than the next thing chanek? An arusa bas Yisrael, an arusa who's a bas Yisrael, a regular arusa miklal nesua bas Yisrael. A nesua bas Yisrael gets chanek, and instead of that she gets skila mechanik l'skila. Shemami no skila chamura. Skila chamura misayif, and how do we know skila is more chamer than sayif? Shechenit l'megadif adarabba sayif. Sayif chamor shechenit lanshe yarnida. Chasam my chomer shechem meinam avid. Amet. V'chi eze kayach meruba kayach hamediach or kayach nidach. Haviyam kayach mediach. V'kal v'chaymer. According to again Rav Shimon, he says that the Meidiach, instead of getting Sayef, gets Chanek. Like we just proved in the previous, we just proved before that skila is more chomer than chanek, then it's certainly sayif akal like koshken. It's certainly more chomer than sayif. Chanek chomer sayif shchenit lemagzav v'imay. My chomer mekadamon. Other sayif chomer shchenit le'anche yernidach. So my chomer shchenit moinam amen. Amchei is a koyach meruba. And this is directly, this we already said before, this is really one of the building blocks of all the other things. It all started by Rav Shimon that he holds that a Mediach in Nidachas gets Chanek rather than Sayef. So obviously, Chanek is Muhammad than Sayef. Rav Shimon Aimer b'Chanek. Shimon says it's Chanek, so clearly he holds Mediach Nidachas that the Mediach is Muhammad than the Nidach, and therefore Chanek is Muhammad and Sayef. Margala b'puma de Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan would often say this pearl of wisdom. Naira hamirasa bas koyin shezinsa b'skila. The Chachamim hold that Naira hamirasa shezinsa, if she's a bas koyin, she gets skila. According to Rabbanan, that's the most chamadika thing, and they hold that she stays with skila. She's not switched to sreifa, even though Torah says a bas koyin gets sreifa, but it doesn't mean she'll get downgraded from skila if she's in a murasis. Shimon Oimer b'sreifa. But Shimon disagrees she gets sreifa because he holds sreifa is the most chamadika. Zinsa me'avia, if this Naira Hamirasa was mezana with her father, so she's mechayev for two things. She's chayev for being born her father, and she's chayev for as a Naira Hamirasa. B'skila, she gets skila. Shimon Oimer b'sreifa, because he'll say the Zinsa me'avia is I'm sorry, it's not talking. I don't think is it talking about a Naira Hamirasa? Let me see. Yeah, it's a talking Naira Hamirasa, but she was not a Bas Kain, she was a Bas Yisrael. So Bas Yisrael who's Mezana, Naira Hamirasa, Stamazai, according to the Rabbanon, she gets, according to everyone, she gets skila. And someone who's ba on her father, the din is it's sreifa. For being ba on her father, the din is for that type of znus, the din is sreifa. So according to the Chachamim, skila is more chomer, so they get skila. Rav Shimon Oimer b'sreifa because he holds sreifa is more chomer than skila. So you have a choice of which one. You go with the more chomer one. Maika mashmal. The Rabban nesua yoytzel l'sreifa v'le'arus. Rav Shimon achas arusav achas nesua yoytzel l'sreifa. This is all dependent on the machlekes about whether a whether a Naira Hamirasa is also gets a sreifa. When the Torah says a bas kayin gets sreifa, is it only on a nesua or is it also an arusa? Like we said, from the beginning, the whole nafkamina of all this is that you give them Muhammadik one. Okay, I think we'll stop over here. Hashem will continue tomorrow morning with more of this topic.
Okay, what time tomorrow?
We've been doing 10 to 8.